Hello, Quai community. I am joined here by the CEO of Quai Network, Alan Orwick, and we are happy to finally be able to get these dev interviews underway. The team behind Quai is incredible, and we're very excited to be able to show you some of the great minds working on the project. So as mentioned, this is Alan Orwick. Very excited to introduce him. So Alan, to start us off, could you just briefly give an introduction to yourself and what your background in blockchain is, how you got involved in Quai, all that kind of stuff?
Sure. Yeah, first off, thank you, Max, for having me. Very excited to talk to the community today and really share the word about what we're doing. And a little bit about myself. I am formerly a UT graduate, so started off as my computer science degree in UT Austin, and that really kind of sparked my blockchain curiosity and really got me involved with not only understanding blockchain as a societal impact, but also just at a technical level. So that was kind of like my first really exploration. And I had several internships where I was doing some stuff, and related to just general programming, but I was always super interested in saying, how could we apply blockchain to this, or how our business is going to be impacted by blockchain? So really started that off like my freshman year. I dabbled in Bitcoin a little bit in high school, kind of, played with some like crypto stuff at the time, but, really started getting serious about it as I started my college career. And that led me starting Texas Blockchain during my sophomore year with a couple of other friends, and really growing the blockchain community at UT Austin. So that was a ton of fun, and really making sure that we could spread the word on campus and get other colleges involved as well. So had some initiatives back in 2017 to have kind of cross collegiate organizations. So partnering with people like UC Berkeley or A&M or other people just across the United States. There's a ton of colleges getting interested in the blockchain space at the time. So for me, that was super exciting, being on the forefront of the university effort for expanding blockchain technology. So kind of going down that rabbit hole, really getting into the weeds on the coursework as well. So teaching blockchain classes. I was one of the first few people to teach blockchain at UT. So that was also exciting, is structuring that curriculum and making sure that we have the proper education and resources for people to learn. A lot of the classes were put on by Texas Blockchain, the student organization, and still are led by that organization today. So with everybody doing that, it's been super exciting to kind of, start that community and expand it not only within UT and the college itself, but Austin in general. So again, that's kind of like where I've started my background, and kind of led me into doing a lot of the research that we had and forming a lot of the processes and education that has ultimately led up to Quai Network today.
Awesome. Yes, I've heard some people refer to you as the father of Austin blockchain. Would you agree with that?
I think Carl or Sruram might have that title for sure, but definitely a lot of great minds in the Austin community. There's some OGs that have been in the Bitcoin community for a very long time. So definitely one of the newer faces on the scene and getting involved with that. But definitely welcome, everybody that has contributed to the community up until this point.
For sure. So kind of to dive into like what Quai is and like actually get talking about the tech a little bit. One thing that we hear a lot about Quai when you go to the website, when you hit the Twitter page, you see this term hierarchical structure of chains. What is a hierarchical structure of chains? What benefits does that provide? And why do users want to look out for something like that?
Yeah, so I think the hierarchical bit is super important because it's like a juiced up roll-up system. And so as you see Ethereum today, Ethereum is a monolithic chain, and it has like one or two roll-ups, right? There's Arbitrum, there's Optimism, there's some ZK stuff. And so it's growing over time, but really what you're starting to see even in the current space is a hierarchy starting to form, of Ethereum being the main chain and all these L2s existing. And so with Quai Network, we take that idea even further and saying we have our main organizational chain that we consider the prime chain, with our region chains that are kind of similar to a layer 2 solution now, but we even take that one step further beyond that and having a third set of chains that can really provide true speed and throughput at a highly decentralized layer 1. So not only do we have that kind of ecosystem starting to emerge that is being mirrored by today's development of technology, but we're also saying we can take a fundamental understanding of each of these blockchains, have them interweave within each other, and then provide a sort of integrated roll-up system that we think is super efficient for all of the individual blockchains interacting within Quai Network.
Yeah, so and the way that Quai secures all these different levels of chains is through a process called merge mining. Is that correct?
Correct. So combining the headers across these blockchains and allowing miners to perform work across many blockchains at one time. So while we shard state, we're not sharding work, which is inherently giving us immensely greater security compared to having a sharded network with sharded work or sharded stake. And so you see that kind of in these systems that are moving to proof of stake and having potential nothing at stake attacks, or having things that are making miners choose across different blockchains. In Quai Network, you don't have to make that decision, and we don't have that risk vector there. So allowing to use merge mining to really have miners benefit from mining multiple chains at once.
Awesome. So Quai utilizes the merge mining to secure all of its internal chains within the network. Is there any merge mining capability with external chains, other layer ones that currently exist?
Yeah, so we're looking to have external merge mining capabilities. So as you've seen, one of the OG merge mining coins was Namecoin on Bitcoin. There's dual mining that can be done with Zilliqa and Ethereum, and there's other capabilities that we look to expand. So whether that's merge mining on Ethereum or other potential chains that are Ethash compatible, or even potentially SHA-256 compatible, we plan to have that in the roadmap for tackling with Quai Network.
Very cool. And so I remember having a conversation with you about this maybe a couple of weeks ago, talking about how once you reach almost like a tipping point of a certain number of Ethereum miners also merge mining Quai, you get almost this backwards compatibility with smart contracts. Could you go into that a little bit?
Yeah, so there's been a lot of theory that we've looked into in terms of what merge mining allows us to do. And so our first priority is saying, let's apply it for a new blockchain and making sure that we can utilize merge mining to the fullest with the understanding of the integrated kind of roll-up system and the hierarchical merge mining of our network. But with other blockchains and ones that are more account-based and ones that can actually have the kind of state updates and state transfers that are not akin to a UTXO system. So UTXO is not fully useful for a system like this, but with the account model, we can actually see our own hashes of blocks included in the parent mine chain that allow us to reference the state updates that could occur between a merged mine pre-existing layer one and a kind of subordinate layer one that utilizes hash rate from the other chain. So theoretically on Ethereum, you could trace those hashes, provide a Merkle proof, and then make those updates to the subordinate layer one in a decentralized fashion, given their sufficient liveliness to a layer one that's being merged mined.
That's fascinating. So what kind of applications do you see this really manifesting itself through? Do you see it as like an easy mechanism for adoption of Quai, or do you see it as having like completely new possibilities that no other chains have been able to look into?
Yeah, I see it as more of a decentralized bridge than anything. And so allowing people to move funds and allowing people to do that without a central actor. So many of the bridges we see today are centralized. And so you have a single server that is facilitating funds, potentially managing keys via multi-sig. And there's just a lot of risks that can occur through that. And in a scenario like ours, we would have more of a process that would make us somewhat reliant on the layer one for various security purposes, but also giving users the ability to seamlessly move funds in a decentralized way, which I think is super important. I think minimizing trust in any of these scenarios, especially in the bridging scenario, is super important. I think there is a lot of scrutiny on bridges that hasn't really been shown yet. And so the bridging ecosystem is going to be kind of ever evolving, and I think is going to be ripe for disruption. And I think a solution like this would be a very great alternative for the current existing bridges out there today.
Interesting. So building off like our conversation about bridges, Quai Network, since it has 13 chains, obviously there's a lot of cross-chain interaction between zones, region, and prime chains.
Yep.
So obviously merge mining is part of the equation to secure all of these chains. But another important aspect is what's called coincident blocks. Could you describe what a coincident block is and how that allows work to be kind of proven throughout the network?
Yeah, definitely. And we'll be sure to link some documents after this about the more technical bits to a coincident block. But essentially, when you are mining, you can find various levels of work for a block. And so that's based off of the block time. So difficulty being a reflection of the targeted block times, and difficulty consistently adjusting to meet those target block times. In Quai Network, we have the various hierarchy, and in the hierarchy, these block times are adjusted to meet certain synchronicity levels. And the synchronicity is achieved based off of these coincident blocks, meaning that there is a block that has various levels of valid work. And so the lowest level being a zone has 10-second block times with the lowest amount of work, meaning if I'm a miner, I will find zone blocks the most often. If I am a miner and I'm mining a region as well, which is enforced of every miner must mine a prime, region, or a zone, but the region blocks have a target time of about 5 minutes, meaning that it's somewhere in between Ethereum and Bitcoin, but you're also still going to be able to find them, somewhat more often than you would a prime block. Prime block being the ones with the greatest amount of difficulty and the longest block times, that being every 15 minutes, and allowing those blocks to meet the level of both the region and the zone below them because they've met sufficient level of work. And so with this, we're actually utilizing kind of true entropy and true levels of kind of objectivity to create these links across these regions and these zones by having certain levels of work meet requirements that are necessary to perform certain actions.
Okay, that makes sense to me. And so one of Quai Network's big benefits is obviously the scalability of the project. So if we're looking at TPS numbers, throughput, we get really high numbers there. And I know one of the massive benefits of Quai is that the project is able to add additional region and zone chains. So the TPS that we see at Mainnet launch is not the maximum TPS that the project could ever reach. So my question for you is there an upper limit to how many region or zone chains you can make, and what is that bottleneck?
Sure, yeah. So in our current understanding of the structure, we've decided to launch in a 3x3 purely because that is the most concise form of TPS usability that we think would be achievable. And so allowing that kind of system to be sort of the test case for what we need to expand into. And so the bottleneck really in terms of adding regions and zones is your synchronicity times. And so if I want to move across regions, then how many coincident blocks am I going to have to wait? And at what level would these coincident blocks be created for me to move these funds? Obviously, the more regions you add and the more zones you add, the more probability there is for other zones to take up that slot for you to be synced across other regions and zones. And so really it's experimenting with a 3x3 structure and seeing, is this optimal? At what level of TPS do we need to adjust, and at what level of organization is this appropriate? And so if people aren't really moving their funds across the network too much, and we can see that there's still TPS bottlenecks within each network, then I think it would be easier for us to adjust. But if there's a kind of Goldilocks spot of TPS usage and people are moving funds across chain frequently, then we're going to say, okay, well, we don't really have the need to expand. And obviously there are other bottlenecks that kind of occur within that, whether that's the orphan rate and the uncle rate, and how many blocks that are getting work that is valid but are not being added to the chain. How many of those are being created as well? What are the fees looking like? If the fees are substantially high due to usage, is that something that needs to be adjusted and something that needs to be controlled? And so I think there's a lot of factors that can be attributed to the structure of the chain, but ultimately, I think a lot of that will come with time and understanding the usage and needs for individual users within the network.
Awesome. So going off of that, understanding and learning new things about the network, perfect timing. The Bronze Age testnet should be dropping within, the next week or two. So I was hoping to ask you a couple questions about that. Starting off with, what major developments or things should users be excited about going into the Bronze Age testnet?
Yeah, before we dive into the Bronze Age, sorry, sidebar, my dog's bringing me toys. So if you see him, just I'm not just flailing my arms, he's constantly wanting attention. But yeah, so Bronze Age is going to be a super exciting time. I think the Stone Age testnet went really well. We had a lot of people that were engaged in the community and a lot of people that were excited about what we're building. And so with Bronze Age, we really look to take that to the next level and really get Quai Network being used and mined by as many people as we can. We want this to be a decentralized community. Even kind of introducing myself as like a CEO of a blockchain platform, I'm like, that shouldn't exist. Like I shouldn't have this title. Like, sure, I have to have the title for like organizational purposes, but ultimately in the near term, like I don't want that title. I want this to be a decentralized project. I want it to be a decentralized platform. I don't think there should be really any gatekeepers to either the decision making or the development of the community. And so with that, and with Bronze Age, I look to onboard that next wave of people that can have their hand in what we're doing. And so really making that accessible, really making sure that people can understand not only Quai Network, but the block reduce protocol and a lot of the fundamentals of what we're building and contributing as well. So, whether that's developers, whether that's just people running full nodes, whether that's people that are mining, or whether that's people even just making memes, like that kind of stuff is all super necessary and super important. And I think with the upcoming releases that we have, there will be more opportunity for people to do so.
Okay. So going into like the actual functionality of the Bronze Age compared to the Stone Age, I know in the Stone Age you were able to do certain limited and monitored like things on the blockchain on the Quai network. Within the Bronze Age testnet, will users be able to essentially use the blockchain to its fullest capacity? Will you be able to make transactions, execute smart contracts, all that?
Yeah. So, I mean, with Stone Age, people can make transactions. And that's the thing that we're trying to slowly increment the capabilities of everything and make it more accessible. And so, on Stone Age, people could still do contracts and do transactions and try it, but it wasn't easy for people. So like there wasn't a simple wallet or there wasn't a simple explorer for people to go and check the transactions. And so for the next round of everything that we're doing with Bronze Age, we look to have that wallet so people don't need to run a node to do a transaction. Or we look to have that explorer. So if you are submitting transactions, how do you know that they're getting confirmed and submitted without having to go to your node itself and run a script to check? And so really, I think the key focus is improving a lot of everything that we have and making sure that we can make things more accessible for people that aren't technical, because the technical people are going to find a way. And so for the people that aren't as technical, it's going to be, how do I download a wallet? How do I go to a URL and look at the block explorer? How do I know that I have certain hashes that are being utilized within the network and having certain transactions that are being confirmed? And so those are the key priorities for Bronze Age and really opening that up and making it more usable. And I think that's going to be super important. I think for the other features and things that we're looking to test, such as merge mining capabilities on top of Ethereum, such as actual smart contract transactions that are cross-chain, is very important as well. So you see a lot of the bridges now are somewhat basic in terms of I'm just moving funds, whether that's an ERC that's being mapped to another contract that's a wrapped asset on another chain. You're seeing some sort of layer zeros kind of approaching. We have a layer 0 protocol that's called layer 0 that kind of does messaging. There's a lot of development being there. I know they just did a huge raise and are building that out now. There's another layer 0 called Phonon that is I think super revolutionary for how they manage a lot of the interactions. And so really understanding how can we aid either the layer 0 process with how we're doing smart contracts, or take a completely different standpoint and utilize a true bridge that can handle smart contract transfers. And so we've done some kind of look into spec in terms of how we want that to be organized, whether that's kind of similar to how Polkadot does some of their transfers as well, or just kind of messaging from chain to chain. I think having a proper standard there will be important for implementation, and that'll be one of the main key focuses of Bronze Age. There's a few other things as well, but I think mostly, those are the key points for the features that are coming up soon.
So for developers, anyone looking to build on Quai Network upon mainnet launch, do you think that the Bronze Age testnet will be a good opportunity to kind of get a taste of what mainnet will be like building on Quai?
Absolutely. We think Bronze Age, as of now, we have kind of 4 key testnets planned. And so that's the Bronze Age test, the first Stone Age testnet, and then the Bronze Age testnet, and then we'll have Iron and Silicon. And so with those 4, each one getting better over time going into mainnet will be a great time for developers to contribute, and whether that's on the actual smart contract deployment and development side. So are you someone who wants to deploy the next DeFi protocol or the next OpenSea or the next NFT platform or gaming platform? I think now is a good time to start experimenting. Are you somebody who's interested in infrastructure? And so do you want to do the next Infura on top of a similar blockchain network? Or do you want to be providing a wallet experience? Or do you want to be providing a certain kind of curated set for developers, whether that's like a developer suite or ecosystem? And so I think there's a lot of opportunity for people that can utilize a new layer 1. And there's a lot that can be looked at for really just experimentation as a whole. So are you going to be creating the next thing that hasn't even been seen on an existing layer 1? I think that's a super fun opportunity for a lot of people. And yes, there might not be as much tooling built out from our team yet, purely because it's still early and we're doing that a lot now. But as Bronze Age and the other testnets progress, that will become available.
Okay, awesome. So really the core of Quai Network is going to be that decentralized nature, right? So the groundwork of the community is going to be people running nodes and miners, which we call Spartans. So what kind of advice can you give for people who maybe didn't participate in the Stone Age testnet, but are interested in mining or running a node during the Bronze Age? How can they kind of prepare their setup or make sure they have everything under control?
Yeah, I think the main thing is just ask questions. And so get in the Discord. I think we have a great community of people that are willing to help. And so the ones that even aren't a part of the team are willing to chime in and really help people understand what we're doing and understand how to take part of the community. And so from that perspective, if anybody does have interest, that would kind of be my first suggestion is just join the Discord, hang out, get a feel for what people are excited about. I think everybody's super excited about building a decentralized platform and really sticking to the tenets of what blockchains are made for rather than just pure price action and centralized transactions and gatekeepers. And so for that and really understanding the pure use case for technology and what this technology wants to achieve. And so that makes me super excited. Those would be my suggestions is just go over the documentation, and if you're not super technical, then you might have to have somebody that is technical kind of guide you through a node setup. And from that as well, just kind of over time, you'll get the hang of it as well. So like some people started running a nodes and like, oh, like after a couple of weeks, they're like, boom, I know how to check on it every day and check certain logs and look at transactions. And so it's super cool to see people learn in that regard as well. And I want our community to be able to facilitate a lot of learning for as many people as possible.
Awesome. So yeah, definitely hop in the Discord and anyone will be able to help out. And the other big question on everyone's minds, what kind of rewards will be offered for the Bronze Age testnet? Is it going to be the same as the Stone Age for running a miner or a node? Will there be any modifications to the rewards for running those things? Anything like that?
Yeah, I would say baseline it'd be somewhat similar. I'm sure for the Stone Age, we want to be a little more generous just because the people had a little bit more risk in terms of the obvious time constraints and the awareness of what they were doing. And so we'll definitely have to go over a lot of the programs and the kind of Quai incentives that are baked into the Bronze Age, but many of that will be released in the coming weeks. And so as we go through and we make our developments, we have a very clear development cycle in terms of all the features that we want to ship before we get to Bronze Age. So while there are a lot of people that are super excited about getting to Bronze Age and making sure that they can mine, there are things as a team that we want to make sure that we have finished before we roll out a lot of this to people. And so outside of that, I can't speak much to the rewards. I think there's some internal discussion that we need to go through and make sure that we have clear. But ultimately, I'm excited for people to earn more Quai. I think there's going to be other opportunities even outside of a technical kind of experience for people to earn Quai. And with that, it's going to be an exciting 2022 from what I can tell.
Awesome. I'd love before we wrap up to just pick your brain about kind of the direction the project's headed and kind of looking towards mainnet. What are some crucial features that are like must-haves before? I know you mentioned that there's some things that need to get done before Bronze Age can launch. What are the must-have features for Quai before mainnet launch?
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of optimizations that are kind of more below the surface that can be made. And so we want to make optimizations to the EVM. Most times we say we're EVM compatible, and the people that are anti-EVM or anti-Ethereum, they're like, well, the EVM is slow and it sucks. And then I look at them and I say, well, why? And then most people can't give me a clear answer. And so we should, as a team, dive into that and figure out, what exactly does the EVM need to become a more elegant solution. And we can do that as a team, considering that we're not suffering second system syndrome. We don't have a deployed blockchain that is already managing millions or billions of funds. We can start it from a ground up and say, where can we improve on this? And so we have plans to potentially look into like parallel processing for EVM transactions. We think that's a significant achievement that some of the already Ethereum community is looking into. We think that there's other optimizations that could be made for Quai specific implementation items. So whether that's something such as grouping transactions so that they can be processed by other blockchains during the bridging process in a more straightforward manner, whether that's minimizing the amount of data that needs to be stored when you do cross-chain types of transactions. So what data actually needs to be passed, reducing redundancy. So how often are we really relaying these cross-chain transactions, and what kind of mechanisms need to go into the peering on that end? I think that's another optimization as well. And then really just increasing the speed and looking into further capabilities. So currently with Quai Network being mostly Ethereum based, we have to rely on Ethereum based technologies. So with that, Level DB is one of the main read-write IO schemes for accessing the database. And so with that, we potentially look into implementing technology such as Pebbles DB, which is actually another research project from the University of Texas at Austin. One of my virtualization professors, he created this database and has already implemented it into a blockchain before. And so we want to see how can we combine with them as well and potentially integrate that technology into Quai Network, making not only the bandwidth more efficient via block reduced protocol, but potentially the read-write IO and the actual computation that is being done. So I think, combining other types of technologies as well, I think there's other optimizations that can be done too. So it kind of just depends on what's consensus based and what's not. So we want to knock out as much consensus breaking changes before Bronze Age right now. Like that's kind of our main priority, is test all of the consensus related items. And then as we get the consensus mechanism bits down, we can iterate on that throughout the next 2 test nets. And then by the time our kind of priority for consensus is finished, then Mainnet will be kind of more focused on dApp development, more focused on community growth, more focused on other kind of technology optimizations that really just make onboarding easier, whether that's UI UX or the actual node requirements as well. So reducing those requirements and making sure that outside of that, we can really just, grow how many people can be involved and kind of in touch with what we're doing.
Yeah, that's fascinating that there's so much blockchain innovation coming out of UT Austin. I had no idea that that project was being built here. The last question that I will ask you this evening is about the tokenomics. I know that you're still working on it, but a lot of people want to know about the tokenomics for the project. So my question is, what, if anything, can you tell the Quai community about what to expect for the tokenomics?
Yeah, when tokenomics, right? When all of this.
Question.
So when number go up, basically. So I think on the tokenomics end, there's a lot that needs to be fleshed out. So I think for the standard bits in terms of like supply breakdown, all that's pretty standard. We're a merged mine coin, we're a proof of work coin. So you're going to be seeing the majority of the token allocation go towards that. So being as decentralized as possible, really making sure that we can get this token into a lot of people's hands. I think also in terms of the economics, you're going to see a lot of adoption incentives. And so how do we structure our allocation to make sure that we can incentivize people, whether that's Fortune 500 companies, governments, nation states, most people that aren't already in crypto, how do we get them using Quai and onboard the next billion people into the blockchain industry? I think that's going to be super important. In terms of other economics at a protocol level, we are doing a lot to actually incentivize proper usage and distribution across many of the blockchains. And so you're going to be seeing a kind of allocation that is proper to distributing hash rate. You're going to be seeing a proper incentive for users to disperse across the chain. How do we take things that Ethereum implemented, such as EIP 1559, or how other chains implemented, such as Avalanche, with kind of a more immediate burn? And so ultimately, we want to be long-term deflationary. We think being a deflationary token is what gives users a lot of incentive to hold, but we also want to be the chain with the most usage. And so really trying to find that balance in terms of how do we really juice these TPS numbers and get people transacting at a global scale. People say Visa does 6,000 TPS, and we want to be able to achieve that at scale while still having the proper economics incentives for people to use the chain long term. And I'm really excited about some of the things that we're doing. We're incorporating a lot of changes with the base fee. So really adjusting the base fee based off of the current usage and some of the uncle rate statistics. We have some interesting ideas of how we can kind of price transactions with the right auction style and how we can have users pay the appropriate amount of fees. We have some interesting ideas in terms of how we want block times to also be corrected, or how the block size we can have corrected as well. Some of that being more based off of the uncle rate. So having a kind of dynamically adjusting block size that will always kind of expand until a certain uncle rate is hit, and the chain is kind of affected in that regard. So really trying to understand these primitives of blockchains and apply them to economics in a way that hasn't really been, from what I've seen, fleshed out at the scale that many blockchains are operating at right now. There's been a lot of ideas that a lot of smart people have looked into this already, but really making sure that we can apply this to our protocol in the best way possible.
Awesome. Yeah. I think everyone will appreciate the insight into the tokenomics. Everyone's very excited to see all the numbers and the full docs. So
yeah.
Any ETA for when we get the tokenomics paper, or is that still under?
I had an ETA, and I've had to move the ETA, unfortunately. Sorry, community. I know everyone's super excited, but there's just a lot going on for the team right now to make sure that we flush it out for both Bronze Age testnet and other bits of the community as well. And so from that perspective, the economics will be coming. I can't really put a tight deadline on when, but it would be, I'd be more than glad to, hop in the Discord and talk about what exactly we're implementing. I know we have an open PR right now in terms of the base fee and looking at how the base fee will incentivize a lot of the block size. So I think that'll be exciting for users to dig into. And then outside of that, people are stacking their Quai. They're earning it now. So everyone, from what I can tell, is super early, super excited. I think, right now, a lot of our focus is not to necessarily be the next best thing in the next 2 years, but be the next best thing for the next 40. Mm-hmm. And it's hard to have that short-term mindset when the markets are so volatile, because you're up 20, you're down 20, you're looking at your portfolio like, damn, I should have bought more, and damn, I should have bought less. And so from that perspective, I know people are super excited, but ultimately what I would like to encourage the community to know is this is something that we want to last for, the next 20 to 40 years, potentially long once we're gone. We want this to be the next money. We want to redefine how people view financial policies, how people view economic incentives, how people utilize self-sovereignty when it comes to storing their own money. We want to really utilize a lot of those fundamentals to drive people to be on Quai Network. And so I think it's easy to say, we're trying to get all these incentives in the right place, but it's another thing to actually do it and then, have a successful project for the long term. And so obviously want to be more focused on the latter rather than just saying, here's some economics, here's some token economics, go do what you want with them. But there's a lot at play here that is, ultimately deciding how the chain will function for a long time. And so we want to make sure we have as much right as we can at the start, and having that be our main priority is definitely what's happening right now.
Makes sense. All right, before we wrap up, do you have any closing thoughts for the community? Any message or anything you want to send?
No, I just want to say, shout out to the current team. We've had a lot of people that are putting in a lot of good work and a lot of people that are excited about what we're doing. And so the team is doing a great job. We're constantly hiring and looking for more people to join the team. So if you're somebody who wants to contribute to what we're building, definitely reach out. For the people that are in the community, definitely very thankful for what they're doing. Everyone's been super friendly and super funny, just, hanging out in the Quai Discord all day, just chatting about random stuff. I think that's awesome. And I look forward to building that community further in the coming years. And, just awesome work that has been done just for the kind of culmination of the Austin community as well. I think Quai Network is really being discovered by a lot of people in Austin. And I think from that perspective, they're excited about it as well. So, definitely spread the word and let people know about what we're building. I think now is a good time to really utilize a new layer one that is sharded and is modular, and people are kind of transitioning from how do we take these blockchains from monolithic to modular. And so that's questions around data availability, questions around rollups, questions around, zero knowledge. And we really want the sharpest and best minds to contribute that to Quai Network. And so if you know of anybody, or if you are that person that can help out with us, please let us know.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to have this conversation. Yeah, I know the community is really looking forward to hearing more straight from the mouth of the devs and learning what y'all are building on. So we appreciate your time.
Awesome. Thank you, Max.
Thank you.